All right. Hey, Andy, good morning. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you, John?
Doing good. I was just telling you in the chat whenever I started that little intro sequence that I need to turn the volume down on that. I hope it wasn't blowing people out. Like I found out in Restream that you can't dial down the volume, so I got to like turn it down in Canva, and then I'll have to export it and put it back in. A little bit behind the scenes chat, so hopefully I didn't blow anybody out too bad. But hope you
I
guys are
think it was
doing
too bad.
good. Yeah. Uh, the end of another week. I was really busy this week, man. I was off work 2 weeks ago, and I end up paying for it. Like you take a week off, and you kind of end up getting punished for it for like 2 weeks after. So I was just like slammed with meetings last week, and then this past week, and it looks like next week I think things are going to kind of lighten up for me a little bit on my schedule. So that's really good.
My
Hey
meetings have
Ross, thanks for
meetings.
watching, man.
I've been in a 2 week long just meeting. It just seems like it never stops. Like I never
Yeah.
leave this chair, these lights and teams. I'm surprised I don't have like sunburn by now from my key lights up above
Yeah.
me. It's just been like a 2 week long meeting, just nonstop.
Yeah, I'm surprised I don't have like permanent like goggle marks on my face because I've been testing out working in VR last week and part of this week,
Right.
just to kind of like explore what you can do and learn a few things. I'm gonna make a video. I made it yesterday, and I'm gonna publish it like early next week about how to be an avatar in Teams. So I've been spending like hours every day with a headset on, and I take it off, and I got like this big red ring around around my face from it being pressed on. So,
I've been
but
really
that'll be a
interested
fun
in that. I've
video.
been living vicariously through some of the screenshots and the pictures that you've been sending over, and I'm
Hmm.
interested to see kind of where it goes. It's been kind of fun just watching from the outside. There's definitely a space that I want to spend more time in. We did the table talk
Hmm.
session at Ignite in AltSpace VR, and I just did it with my curved monitor and my
Hmm.
normal setup, and it was pretty awesome just to experience it there. But to be fully immersed in it, white headset and everything, that'd be
Yeah.
really really cool. So I definitely want to get into that, and I'm really curious to see some of what Microsoft Teams Mesh is going to roll out and kind of that
Hmm.
immersive environment. Keeping my eyes on a lot of the announcements and content that Microsoft's released in around that is a slow trickle because that's a really exciting space for me, and you're
Hmm.
trailblazing in there, so I'm happy to tag along for that journey.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot cooler than I thought it would be actually. I'm more into the idea. I got some accessories that made it a lot more comfortable, and I kind of covered that in my video. So next week, I'm thinking it's probably going to be a little bit controversial because it's a controversial topic. So we'll see how it goes. But what we're here to talk about today is, let's see, I got the right shirt on for this, the sharing part of Teams meetings and everything that you can do with sharing. And we've got some slides this time to kind
Oh
of
no,
help keep us
PowerPoint.
on track a little bit. So this is a cool new feature in Restream. I like to talk about like the tech that we use in order to do this live stream. And Andy and I, we discovered last week that now Restream has the ability to upload files and use them as a presentation. So you can do PowerPoint or Word documents or PDFs or connect to Google Drive and import from a Google Drive space. So we thought it would be pretty cool to kind of go through and use these as like title markers or something like that. And we can kind of build chapters off of that. So whenever the YouTube video at the end renders, I can go through the timestamps and I can just basically find where the title card changed. And then we can put in chapters properly so that, a 2 hour live stream is a little bit more digestible for you guys. So we got some people rolling in here saying good morning. Good morning, everybody. I see Ross and John are joining us as well. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, of course. So all three of those platforms. Did you add any channels on your side, Andy?
Oh, I was supposed to. We had a little technical hiccup there.
I see
I don't know
3
if I
right
can actually
now.
do it while we're live. That's interesting.
I don't think we can. I don't see a plus
Yeah.
button, but that's
Well,
okay.
yeah. the was switching between accounts. Like I was trying to do everything in a private browser to get set up so for the demos,
Mhm.
and logged in on Restream over there, and then realized what 3 minutes before we were start that I was in the wrong Restream account, that I needed to be in this one
Yeah.
because of the new feature Teams in Restream, where you and I can both take control of the screen, and the content that we're
Mhm.
sharing, interact with the comments, and bring things up on the in the presentation. And so last minute switcheroo. Yeah. So won't be streaming on my channels this week, but that's okay.
Cool. Um,
I think
yeah,
we're in
I'm
enough
really pumped
locations.
about that. The second feature that we're trying out today in Restream is it's a new feature called Teams, which, great
Restream
naming.
Teams.
Yeah, Restream Teams, not Microsoft Teams, to talk about Microsoft Teams. But with Restream Teams, I was able to add Andy to my account, and then now Andy has the power to click on comments and show them on screen. And whenever we share both of our screens here in a second, if he wants to show something, he can just swap out the content if he wants to. And then if I want to show something, I can drag my monitor onto the big area that takes up 2/3. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be a lot more seamless because Andy won't have to remind me to make his screen bigger, if I accidentally forget that. So I think that's going to be super seamless. So to get started here, I am going to go ahead and bring on both of our desktops, and then we'll bring this back on. So I think we've got a really cool demo environment today. We've got a meeting running with several fake people, and then me and Andy joining as real humans. And it's going to allow us to show all the different options that we have for sharing content in Microsoft Teams meetings, um, and show what the internal experience versus the external guest experience, as well as the browser versus the app. We'll be able to demonstrate a lot of stuff here. So to kind of dive in and get started, I wanted to start first with maybe the most common ways to share content. If we have to assume, that it's not just super technical people or people who have a ton of experience with Microsoft Teams who might be watching our live streams. So, maybe you've never used Teams before, or you've just been in Teams as a spectator. I wanted to start out with covering like what are the most common or the simplest ways before we dive into the super complex virtual cameras and virtual microphones and scripting and stuff that you can do. What is just like the bare bones basic way to share? And when Andy and I, when we were talking about what what the most common way to share is, in my opinion, the thing I see the most frequent is people either sharing their screen, so like an entire monitor, sharing a window if they're a little bit more advanced, or sharing PowerPoint Live if they've kind of really jumped onto the bandwagon, of what Andy and I, what other MVPs, Microsoft themselves promote, which is, hey, the best way to share PowerPoint slides is using PowerPoint Live. So those three methods are really what I see the most. And to dive in a little bit into the screen sharing experience, I think maybe we just start out with a demo. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So, um, one thing I wish that I had was like a preview of what the next slide was in this in this Restream product. So, because Andy
You
put
can
together
kind of
some
see it up in
slides
the
here that are
corner.
really helpful. Do what?
Yeah, you can kind of see it up in the corner if you get the Restream window open. It's really
Mhm.
small over there, but you can kind of see like what the next slide is.
Oh, okay, cool. So, what we've got is the most common method to share content in a Microsoft Teams meeting is just sharing your screen, sharing your entire desktop. You get everything along with that. And I think this is the simplest way to go. This is what I do typically, because basically you just got to get it in the monitor somewhere that is being shared, and you know that your audience can see it. It's got a nice red line around it. You don't have to worry about, like, did I share the right window, or now I want to switch to another application? Do I have to unshare and reshare something? I think it's really nice and simple, but I have multiple monitors, so I'm kind of like set up to do that. Andy, do you typically share your desktop, or do you go with window sharing first?
I typically do desktop, and like even backing up just a step, you've got your desktop
Mm-hmm.
web, and then you get the mobile experience whenever you join in a meeting. More often than not, that I'm the presenter of the content that we're going to be talking about. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
typically running from the desktop, and so when I go to share, I typically share the desktop because I'm usually switching between multiple pieces of content. I'm doing a PowerPoint
Mm-hmm.
presentation, and then I'm going into demos. I like PowerPoint Live. It's really, really cool. But there's friction between sharing in PowerPoint Live and then switching to the desktop and then coming back. And it just adds a delay or a pause in the content. It doesn't flow very well all the time. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
typically share the desktop so that I can easily move back and forth between the things that I need to talk about and then the things that I need to demo. And that's easier for me. One note about sharing the desktop, though, is you're sharing everything, all the windows, all the menus, basically everything that's in that
Mm-hmm.
particular screen. Users are going to see that, and that does include things like notifications. So I always have to remember to put it in do not
Mm-hmm.
disturb so that I don't get the pop-ups and notifications and upcoming meetings. I have to remember to shut down Outlook, turn Outlook off, but also to if by any chance it's on, make sure I go into the settings in Outlook and turn off the audio alerts that message is coming in as well, because those still come through. But I typically share the desktop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same way. And the way that you do desktop sharing is it's the first option available. So if we're in Megan Bowen right here, she has the ability to click share in the upper corner. And then the first option available to her is her screen. She can choose between the screen or whatever windows she has available on her computer. So if she hits her screen, it's going to minimize the Teams window because she just has a single monitor. And like Andy said, you have this red line all the way around the window or the monitor that's being shared, and you're going to see her icons and what those are named. You're even going to see the little preview of the Teams meeting because she's like on a single monitor. Now, a pro tip is she could take this little mini window and she could move it to another screen if she had a second screen available, and that's pretty helpful to do. She also could minimize that. So you want to keep that in mind, is that, like, somebody, if they have their camera on and they were recently speaking, they're going to be shown in the screen sharing as well, unless you remember to minimize that. But that little helper is pretty handy because that's where you can quickly mute and unmute your microphone, turn your camera off, or something like that, as well as stop sharing with the third option right here. So if she clicks that little X, then the red band goes away and she's back into her Teams meeting. Now, something I see a lot of people do is they go share their screen like this, and then they say, like, "Hey, can everybody see my screen?" And they ask that, and then they have to wait for somebody to unmute. Um, I've gotten, it's taken some practice, but I've gotten to the point where, I really trust Microsoft Teams to the point that, if I see this red line, that's what you watch for. When you see that red line, you can be confident that, yes, everybody can see your screen. You are sharing it into the Teams meeting. So whenever I share a screen, I try really hard to just keep going, just keep talking, and not really like get out of the flow and ask for somebody to confirm. Um, on the flip side of that, what I do is if somebody goes to share their screen and I see it inside of my Teams window, I think a good etiquette tactic, if you want to, like, help people out and kind of be, like a good team player, is to let them know you can see their screen by throwing a reaction in there. So before they even ask, "Hey, can everybody see my screen?" As soon as I see the screen, what I do is I throw a thumbs up there. And then that person, when they're sharing their monitor, they'll see a couple thumbs ups pop up. Whether they asked if you could see the screen or not, it kind of gives them a confidence boost that, like, okay, everybody's on board with me. They're following along. That's something that I haven't told people that I've started doing that, but over maybe the past 6 months or so, I just do that in every meeting I'm in to try to encourage other people to use reactions, but also kind of help the presenter out so they don't have to ask that, can you see my screen? Because it's like fingernails on a chalkboard for me every time I hear somebody say that. It's like next slide, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Right. So I do a lot of the same things that you just went over and discussed. I share the desktop. I pay attention to that red line. It does kind of jump around a little bit. Sometimes I think I'm sharing, and like I use Launchpad and the what's the other thing called on the Mac? Mission Control, where it's
Oh
a three
yeah,
finger swipe and it
mission
allows me to
control.
switch between content, and I use that heavily. And
Hmm.
sometimes when you do that, it moves the red block depending on what you've shared. So definitely pay attention to the red outline and like where that is. But like you, I have confidence in what it's doing, that it's going to do what I want.
Hmm.
Now, one thing I do want to point out around the sharing piece is let me bring. Am I on the forefront?
Yeah,
There we go.
there you go.
All right, so let me share something like on my screen. So, like for example, I'm going to go in. I'm going to share my screen. So
Hmm.
this guy. So I'm in the presentation, and like you were
Yeah.
mentioning earlier, you've got that little window down there, and
Hmm.
that tells us, basically the status of like who's talking, and you get the controls. But what I actually do is I re-expand that, and I actually go and put it on another monitor so that it's up on that other screen, and I can see
Hmm.
it while I'm still actually
Yeah, you
working
have
on.
your gallery available.
Yeah, whatever I'm sharing, they still see that. I share my main laptop screen, and then I put that on my second monitor, and I usually put it right up underneath the camera so that I can
Hmm.
monitor that. I can see questions and answers coming through. I keep the chat window open inside of
Hmm.
there, so I'm able to communicate with people. I'm able to get into the meeting settings and keep track of that. If there are people coming in late, it can control the microphones and the audio and stuff. So I always keep that off to the side on a secondary screen, secondary monitor, so that I
Hmm.
can keep track of what's actually happening all across the interface.
Yeah,
The
that's
other
a
thing
really good
is,
tip.
if somebody's having technical issues, I'll bring this window into the main screen. So it's like a
Hmm.
meeting in a meeting, and then I'll show them, hey, did you go over here, and did you do this, or here's where you go and your device settings, and like I'll show them like on the actual screen, and I'll walk them through that, and then I'll go
Hmm.
ahead and move that back to my second monitor, and from there, like I'm able to continue whatever I'm working through, walk them through the content that I'm sharing, switch over, go back and forth between different applications, and then
Yeah.
just continue the presentation pretty seamlessly. um, and just kind of work like that. So that's my pro tip. I just keep that secondary window open on another monitor. So if you have two monitors, share one,
Hmm.
put it on the other. We're going to talk about the difference between standard monitors and widescreen monitors in a little bit, but that
Yeah.
one helps me. And if you don't have like a second monitor, depending on like what devices that you have, like in the Mac world, I can use my iPad as a second monitor using this thing called Sidecar. Just plug my iPad in with a Lightning to USB-C cable, and I can use it as a second monitor. Or Sidecar can just broadcast to it. You don't have to plug it in. I like to plug it in so it keeps everything charged. But if
Hmm.
you're on like Windows devices, there's ways that you can broadcast to or use like a tablet as a second monitor. There's some free tools for it, and then there's some paid options. But I use the iPad as the second monitor if I need it, or I've got another portable monitor I use for like trainings that I carry with me. But I use my widescreen at home as the second monitor so I can keep track of what's happening over there.
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of do the same thing with having multiple monitors around. And the way I think maybe the best way to demonstrate this is I'll bring up my display configuration for my Mac here. And There we go. We can kind of see that. Let me move these other windows off the screen. So what I do is I have two external monitors hooked up, which, like Andy was saying, we both have M1 Max. I have a plain M1, so you can only have one external monitor attached to it. Andy's rocking like the M1 Max right now, which allows him to have like four external monitors or something. So he can have like a couple HDMI or DisplayPort monitors. So the way I get around it, and I have three monitors, is I've got my first one right here, this one, that's my laptop monitor. And I leave my laptop open. I have it physically on a stand right here. And this is the one that I dedicate to sharing all the time because it's the right aspect ratio. It's a 16:9. It's technically 16:10, but it's close enough that it's not going to be super stretched and look really weird. And then, as Andy pointed out, he's got an iPad attached. That's what this kind of square monitor is. And that's what I'm looking at you guys on right now. Is it's technically a teleprompter with the iPad underneath it. And what I do is similar to what you said, Andy, where you go and share the screen and then you bring up the Teams window again. I put that Teams gallery on the iPad. That way I'm making eye contact with my participants. I can see them and it looks like I'm looking at them. And then over to my left, that's my demo monitor. So like I'm kind of like shifting my focus and doing a demo down here and then addressing back at the camera. The thing that I never share is this one. This is the ultra wide 34-inch monitor. And you can tell that like it's not going to be a great experience if I were to share that through into the Teams meeting. It would end up really squished, and I'll share it in a little bit here to kind of demonstrate that. But if you're a Mac user, the magic trick, or kind of the magic thing that I added is, Andy, you mentioned that your icons show up, your notifications show up, so you got to go into do not disturb, or you got to shut down Outlook or something like that on your Mac on the operating system. What I do is, because I never ever share this ultra wide monitor, what I've done is, you notice this kind of white rectangle at the top. That is the menu bar. That represents that this monitor is my primary display. So I configured and I set up my monitors in my operating system, and I drug the white rectangle, the skinny white rectangle, I dragged that to the ultra wide. And what that does is it makes all notifications for the operating system show up on that ultra wide monitor. So because I'm set up this way, I don't have to go and do not disturb. I don't have to worry about Outlook or text messages and things. What I do is I always share the laptop, and then I never ever have any notification show up on there because it's my secondary display, even though it's my laptop screen. And that has saved me a lot, because I've been
Yeah.
in that unfortunate scenario where, like, you set up do not disturb, but like your wife texts you and it still shows up because you set her to like be able to like come through your do not disturb. I should have my wife should be able to get a hold of me. Well, then something personal, like pops up on screen, and that's not good to have that situation.
Yeah, I've dealt with that. Usually, it's my fantasy football buddies that are the ones that are guilty of that. What I actually use for some of that, I do turn off
Mhm.
notifications. I go into do not disturb. Outlook's been the biggest culprit, and there's some settings in there that you can kind of tweak. But what I prefer doing is is I have a couple of apps that I use that help with this. So I use this app called Bartender, and it allows me to clean up the menu bar, like what actually shows up at the top. Now you can't really see it on my screen, but that's like when I hover over the icon, then it shows me all the menu icons. But otherwise, like it hides them, and like I can hide just about every icon that's up there, and so that's really helpful just to clean up that whole area. The other thing I do is I have an app that allows me to hide the desktop. So like
Mhm.
all the folders and files and stuff, it's one click and it hides all of it. So like that's a
Oh yeah.
secondary app that I have. that allows me to do that. Can't remember the name of it right now, but it's one of these 55 apps that I have
These little
installed here, and it
utilities that
just
we
runs
all download.
from the menu bar up at the top, and so that
Yeah.
helps to clean up a lot of that. But I do like the tip about putting the widescreen as the primary and putting menu bars over there. So I will be exploring that after we're done here today.
Yeah, it really helps, and it makes sure that like so another thing I did recently, and I'm kind of training my brain um to like understand or like this is well, I guess it's not in here as a setting, but traditionally you have your Mac dock across the bottom of your screen, like down here. What I did is I set it to be on the right hand side. So my dock is on the right of the monitor. And it's really weird feeling because like I have like 2 decades of going to the bottom. But the problem that I noticed is I have my dock down at the bottom, and Mac OS is smart enough now that if you move your mouse to the bottom, it moves your dock over to that screen, which is trying to be helpful. Well, I don't want to do that anymore. So what I did is because my monitor is all the way to the right, I put the dock on the right hand side. And then that way I can move my mouse all the way down to the bottom of my screen. And I never have to worry about my dock accidentally popping up and people
Mhm.
saying, like, oh my gosh, you have so much unread email. I just never have to think about that because it's all the way on the very, very far side. My mouse doesn't even get close to that whenever I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, I use the hide dock option and then the genie option. So like I scroll to the
Hmm.
bottom and it pops up. Otherwise, it's completely off the screen and you don't see it.
Yeah.
It's only when I have to go to like I want to go start this PowerPoint and I'm trying to click on the very tiny icon. It's way down here in the corner. Like that's the only time I run into problems with that. Like the dock will pop up every now and then. For
Yeah.
the
Like
most part, it's
accidentally.
hidden. It's out of the way when I do presentations.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good idea to like hide it. I also I would like to get to where I could hide that and hide my menu bar because that's like a new Mac OS thing where you can even
Mhm.
hide the menu bar. It's like super clean.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That came
I
out
feel like
after I
I'm
bought
missing
Bartender,
something.
but I like Bartender because I can
Oh
organize
yeah.
things in the order that I want, and I can make things visible
Hmm.
if I want and hide the other things that I don't need, so, I'm kinda digging that app.
Yeah. I use an app called Dozer for that. It's super, super handy. So that's about sharing a screen and kind of the basics of sharing a screen with a couple tips and tricks in there. The next most popular way that I see people sharing content is whenever they share just a window. And this can be handy, especially whenever you only have one monitor. So you're just rocking with your laptop and you're on the go or something like that. And you don't want to accidentally show a notification. You don't want to accidentally open up your email. That's like the worst. Actually, worse for me is when I accidentally open up my Teams chats and you get to see like what I'm saying in my Teams chats. That's like super not good whenever I get really nervous about that. Um, but not that I talk bad about any of any of my colleagues in Teams chats. Um, but sharing a window kind of protects from that, and it's really similar to how Megan went in here and she shared her screen, so she was able to share her entire monitor. Well, if she wanted to share just her window, that's this option right here. So say that she has like a browser that she wants to demonstrate, and she's going to show like how to go to Google on her browser. So what she can do is she can go into the sharing menu and she sees that there's 3 windows available. So if she selects that, it will say, okay, here's the name of all of your windows. You've got your Teams calendar, which is minimized right now. You've got this meeting, which you don't want to share this meeting into the meeting. That's a little bit too meta. But there's her browser. So she wants to share just the browser window and she doesn't have to worry about her email or anything else popping up. So there we go. We can share just that one window. And what you notice the difference here is she has the red bar, the red line around just the one window, not the entire monitor. And then now she can be confident that that she's only like sharing the content that she controls. Now, the downside, in my opinion, that is that like it's not very easy to switch back and forth between shared windows. I'm the type of guy that I have to do like I have to like show slides, and then I go like do a demo, and then I'm jumping to the Teams app and then back to a browser. And that's too much switching for me. So what I always do is I share the monitor and I set it up that way. If you're going to switch windows, though, what you got to do is you got to go down here, stop sharing this one, and then go back in and be like, okay, I'm going to share this other window now. Let's look at my calendar. And now I'm sharing just my calendar. So it's not quite as smooth as just sharing your desktop and then kind of flipping around applications, but it's there, especially if you're using just a single monitor and you want to protect yourself from embarrassment. Andy, do you have any tips for sharing windows, or do you pretty much never use it either?
I don't like the friction between switching back and forth between content. So I do have a couple of tips though. Can you share your window again and then
Yeah.
bring that back up? All right. So this is what it looks like
Yeah.
when you're sharing the window. It's like from your end, this is what you
Yep.
see.
So I'm sharing it. I see just a line. And then if we look at Andy's desktop here, this is what the audience sees.
So this is the biggest complaint that I get from end users, that all the Teams controls are taking up too much room on the screen. So like John's window, it's there and it's taking up the majority of my Teams window, but it's really, really like the it's zoomed in, it's really, really big, but also like all these videos up here are like taken over, and then like I've got the device settings or I got the chat window open. And like if you're on a smaller screen, that can be detrimental to your experience. So tell users like, just close out the chat window. You'll still get little pop-ups and you'll see little notification bubbles if you need to see something. But like there's, in some cases, depending on like what's being shared, there are some options to like maybe pin something or spotlight something or fit something to the frame. So just tell end users, try to use some of those options if you can. And like if you can, also take the Teams meeting window and make it as big as you can, so you get like kind of a full screen view inside of it, depending on the resolution of your monitor as to what you can do. But on the presenter side, if we find like the resolution is like really, really high, you can actually go up in the web browser and you can change the resolution in the web browser using the meatball menu in the upper right hand corner. So you could maybe
so I could blow that up.
Yeah, you could zoom in like that and
maybe like
go
200
really far inside of something, or you could back way out and you could get more on the screen. Now,
that's a helpful tip from the presenter perspective, is like think about your audience, and what they can or can't see. So you might make your text a little bit bigger, try to be more accommodating.
Yeah. And like I'll also like if I'm given a presentation, like I'm going to be using like screen sharing and Teams, like hybrid for instance, like I'll get there a little bit early and I'll set up and I'll share something and I'll walk to the back of the room just to kind of see what it looks like from the last row, and then go and compare that with like the middle and the front of the room, just so I have an idea of like, do I need to leave this at 100% or maybe bump it up to 125, like when I'm sharing from that web browser. And another thing about sharing from the web browser that's really handy. So I'm going to go into my share tray, and then I've got 19 windows that I can pull from because I've got everything in the world open. And I'm going to find the web browser window that I want to share. So let me go into that. It's on my other monitor. So just a second. It's this one. All right. So I'm going to go and share that screen. So like if you bring up yours.
Yeah, so here's what I see from Megan's perspective. She sees the Teams calendar popped up.
All right, so I'm in the web browser. I'm in Chrome, and I'm just sharing the web browser. So I do a lot of things from the cloud. Like I put all my files in OneDrive and SharePoint, Teams. I use Outlook in the web browser. Like I spend a lot of time in the web browser. So when you're in the web browser, you can easily open up multiple tabs. And so you can go back and forth between the different tabs right inside of there, and you can share content that way. So I can easily go from, okay, here's something in Teams. Now let me switch over to this tab and go do this. Oh, there's a PowerPoint that I need you to see. So I go in and I find that presentation. I'm just going to open up like a generic one. And so now I'm in a PowerPoint and I can do something in the PowerPoint, and then I can go back to Teams, and like so I can move around that way without having to switch between windows. So I can just share the web browser and move back and
Yeah.
forth there. And pro tip for that, you can actually hide the address bar and the menu bar. Um, there's a shortcut for it. I believe on the Mac it's Shift Command and F, and you can toggle that, and it'll allow you to hide the menu bar in the address bar. You can also,
Nice.
if you put it in full screen, and depending like the monitor you're sharing, if you put the window in full screen, you can minimize some of those menu bars as well, and then just concentrate on the content. So there's a few different
Mhm.
options there, but using just a single window and a web browser, and because Microsoft 365 has so many things that are web based now, it makes it
Yeah.
really easy to get to most of what I need and be able to display that right inside of that window and just take advantage of that.
Mhm. Another tip that that I've brought up in the past with being able to see that shared content, and it being kind of squished, is go ahead and share that window again. Is that you as the audience member, the participant, you have the power to zoom in yourself and pan around if you need to. So if somebody does share like an ultra wide monitor or something like that and it's too squished for you to see, you don't have to raise a stink about it, or ask them to like stop doing that. You can scroll in yourself. So I don't think this is gonna, well, it's because I'm in a VM. But on if you're like natively on the computer, you can hold down the I believe it's the control or the command key and scroll in and out with your mouse. And then that will open up there, that will zoom in up to 4 levels for you and zoom back out. If you have a trackpad also with a multi-touch trackpad, you can get into this zone and you can basically squeeze, like pinch or zoom to expand that and make it a little bit bigger. And then you can jump into that and you can like click to drag around on the screen. So if you can't quite read something, you do have the power to zoom in on your own. My demo just failed on me because I'm remote desktoped into another computer. So my multi-touch trackpad isn't, passed through into the VM. But that's a really helpful tip as well for people that, you know, you can't see something. And I think, Andy, go ahead and change like the aspect ratio of that window. If you squeeze it down, it's going to update as well. So something else to keep in mind is, yeah, if you like try to have your window be like about 16 by 9 aspect ratio, or maybe like a square or something like that. If you've got like a real skinny narrow or like skinny vertically, it's going to render weird on people's Teams client because Microsoft is trying to fit it into this 16 by 9 area right here. And you can see as he's making his window shorter and shorter, it's making it like this weird view for everybody with all these big black bars. And that's because Teams can't change the size of Andy's window for him. So it's just got to like render inside of that constraint for him.
But it tries to
So
fit
as
the
you're
frame.
sharing, do what?
It tries to fit the frame. So like
Yeah, exactly.
I scroll down and like I'm still in like a 16 by 9-ish ratio, but mine's
Hmm.
really, really small. And so like the menus are overlapping on the content, and it's trying to fit that in that entire frame.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's just something else to keep in mind. You might make the window full screen, or have it be like a normal shape before you share it. Otherwise, it's going to be like weird looking to other people, and you want to be aware of that whenever you're sharing. It's kind of hard when you can't see like what the other person sees, what the audience sees. You don't get a view into what they see unless you use like the reporter mode and side by side and things like that. That gives you a little preview. So I don't think I have anything else to add to window sharing. Andy, any other ideas that come to mind
No, I think we're good on the window sharing
for
piece.
Windows? Okay, so the third way that I see most popular is PowerPoint Live. And I don't think we'll go too deep into this one, other than to say that we did a live stream. Gosh, it was probably like what, October, November, something like that, where we went over PowerPoint Live specifically for like 2 hours straight. So if you go to my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of all of our past live streams, and you can watch that one to see all of the nuances of PowerPoint Live and where it works and annotations and all of that cool stuff. Just to demo it fairly quickly and show you like one or two changes, is it's available in the sharing tray. You can go to PowerPoint Live down here near the bottom. So she opens up her share tray. There's PowerPoint Live with the most recent PowerPoints that Megan worked on. She also can browse her OneDrive or browse her computer to find that file and get it uploaded into the meeting. But she can just select one of these. And that reminds me, one thing I was going to point out, Andy, is you notice that we were just stealing the sharing back and forth. So this is another thing I see in meetings of people who, aren't quite as savvy with Microsoft Teams, is they think that they have to ask the other presenter to stop sharing before they're allowed to share. That's not the case. So if you guys are, there's two people presenting and you got an audience, you want to watch out for those little things like, hey, can you share my screen? Or next slide, please. Another one of those kind of like those trigger words that I have is, hey, can you stop sharing so I can share? Like, you don't need to ask that. You can just click the share tray, and then I can click open this slide deck, and it's going to take over the sharing from Andy. So now I'm rendering this PowerPoint slide deck inside the meeting. It's going to be higher quality. I have control over it inside the meeting window, and I have the slide notes, the next slide, and all of that cool stuff. So I can navigate forward and backward. I can jump to specific slides, and I can even annotate. Like, I can do a laser pointer here, and I can show like Litware plus Contoso, the sales proposal. So I can do like annotations on the screen. The laser pointer fades out automatically. If I wanted to, I'm going to go to like a more white screen. If I wanted to write something on here, then I could mark up the slide with a pen. And if you use the pen tool, then that will persist on the slide for you. It doesn't fade away automatically. Now, one of the most recent items that just came out inside of PowerPoint Live is the ability to do the presenter modes in your PowerPoint experience. So up here at the top, if you haven't done PowerPoint Live in a while, you'll notice this new area where it says presenter mode, and you've got just the slides with like the normal gallery, like film strip of thumbnails, or you can go to standout mode. So if she clicks on this, it's going to cut Megan's camera out, and now Megan is placed on top of her content. And I'm going to show like Andy's view. So this is what Adele sees in the meeting. Is she sees, hey, here's Megan, which, let me go to one that doesn't have a recording in it. There we go. That's nice and clean. So Megan is on top of her slides, and you saw that fancy transition, all the animations, all of that cool stuff. And because Adele is a presenter in this meeting, Adele could say, take control. So at the top of Andy's screen, he has a button for take control, and then he could go to the next slide. So it's like passing the virtual slide advancer back and forth. And now, because someone else took over the screen, my video went away because I'm not the one talking over the slides anymore. And if I go to take control back, so I'm going to press the button for take control. So yeah, now Andy's on top of the slides because he's the one talking. And if I go take control, Andy is going to see a banner that says, hey, somebody else took control. And because I had standout mode already enabled before, I automatically pop up onto my slides. And so Andy, if you go back and take control now, your video should automatically pop up on your slides without an extra click. So now not only are we handing back and forth the slide advancer, we're also putting ourselves on screen on top of our slides. So whenever it's like Andy's time to talk, he can hit take control, go to the next slide, and just start going. He doesn't have to say next slide. And as Phil points out, you know, I hate that. Now that you know that PowerPoint Live exists, it's really painful whenever you see somebody say next slide, please. The only place where I like am accepting of that is in live events, because I know that if the production team is using Teams NDI, PowerPoint Live is not available to them. So that's the only time where I'm like, I'm okay with like, they're sharing a screen and they gotta like kind of do the next slide please thing, which is a bummer because like those are also like the most high profile and most important events, and I really wish that we could have PowerPoint Live inside of a live event. I mean, the name's right there.
There's a company that shall not be named that John and I spend a lot of time in meetings with, and it always makes me cringe when they deliver a presentation with many different presenters and they do the next slide, please, and they don't use PowerPoint
Mm-hmm.
Live. It drives me
Yeah.
crazy. You have the tools,
Yeah.
let's use these.
It's
I'm a big fan of it.
It's painful.
My my only critiques are when I need to go from a PowerPoint to a demo and back to the PowerPoint. It's friction. I have to stop the
Yeah.
PowerPoint Live, go and share the window or the desktop, and then go back into PowerPoint Live. It only
Yep.
takes a few seconds, and it's getting better. But I would like to see a more seamless experience where I can quickly switch in and out of the two. My favorite things about PowerPoint Live are it puts the slide in the cloud and it minimizes the bandwidth necessary to deliver this to the person on the other end. It optimizes that significantly. It's something like 65% reduction of bandwidth in order to present. It also minimizes the number of hops between the content and the person that is on the receiving end. So we're all watching the same presentation from the cloud. If I put in embedded videos, if I have transitions, if I have like animated GIFs, those things play better because they're not going from my local network to the cloud through all of that plumbing and then down to your local network and then finally on your machine. It's in the cloud, so it's minimizing the distance it takes to get to all of us. I think all of that stuff's great. So I'm a big fan of PowerPoint Live. I try to put most of my content in PowerPoint Live to take advantage of that, but there's always times I have to switch over to demos. But as we're seeing here, like my interface, I can see all my slides that are coming up, which is great. So like I can move back and forth very, very quickly if I need to bounce back and forth between slides. And then I also see the video of the other people that are maybe attending, and I can control what's actually happening. I can do the presenter mode on top of it. I can see my notes. I can do the annotations. I think all of that stuff's brilliant. I absolutely love it. And now that we can do the presenter mode or the standout mode on top of it, that's just even better for those users that are joining in on the desktop. But that is one limitation that we need to mention. The standout mode and the overlay mode, how that affects somebody that's joining in using the desktop app versus the web browser. If they're on the web browser on the other end, they're not going to see me on top of the content. They'll just see me with a blacked out background in the lower corner. And we'll have a demo on that in just a little while. So there's a few things I think they could adjust with PowerPoint Live, mainly being able to switch back and forth between content. But like you're saying, being able to switch back and forth between presenters seamlessly, keeping the cameras like up and running and just passing control back and forth. All of that's great. The end users, though, they do have the ability to just scroll through the slides independently of the presenter. So like when they're viewing it in the lower corner and it's kind of hidden by my screen, whenever they're working with it in that lower corner, they can move back and forth between the slides. I can actually go and turn that off. And so we can prevent them from moving independently of us. We can keep them in sync with the conversation. And then some feedback that I've gotten from some of my users based off of some other platforms that they worked with, we can go in and annotate. And I use the annotation tools all the time now, especially the laser pointer. I love it. And then you get like the pencils and the markers. Those are persistent as you move back and forth. The annotations stay there. But the feedback that I've gotten from some of my colleagues are they want the participants to be able to annotate on the slide as well. So like if a participant has a question about something, they want them to be able to, from their end, interact with the slide and me to be able to see that versus right now it's presenter out. I'm the one that's doing the annotation and kind of moving along. The other thing I like about PowerPoint Live is that if I put a link in a presentation and I'm using the cursor, I can
Mhm.
click follow the link right there inside of the presentation. If there's a video, I can play it, and then if I'm still talking about the slide, I can replay the video
Mhm.
without having to leave the slide. And then there's a couple other things we talked about in our previous webinar. Like I can hide the presenter view if I just want to go into this kind of format. We can do that. We can view the slides in a high contrast mode, so that's helpful depending on like the room that I'm in and the lighting that I have. And then there's
Mhm.
also the in-slide translation, so you can switch the slides up and you can translate them in the course of the presentation, which is really helpful when you have mixed audiences and you
Yeah.
need to switch it over. So you can that's all built right in. But I think the biggest for me is that it minimizes what I'm sending to other users based off of network and bandwidth, and it uh, does a pretty good job of minimizing latency and lag. And they're making some more improvements to it. I'm excited to see some other things that they add to this later on.
Yeah. That's a cool point about annotation. You know, I wish that other people could annotate slides. Honestly, I also wish that we could annotate the entire screen. I've seen that in a couple of competing products
Mm-hmm.
where they have the ability to annotate the screen, which would be really nice if you're like building a mock-up or you're building slide decks or something like that, to have the audience or the other participants be able to write notes, you know, on the screen and then like maybe snapshot that or something, save it as a meeting asset. I think that would be really nice. We have a question from Will Finley about like, do you think that we can trust now that everybody has the latest or an up to date enough Teams client to where PowerPoint Live video will work? You know, if you embed a video, it'll play properly. Have you run into any issues with that? He said he's been burned, and I know he's in a healthcare environment.
Um, Number one, desktop. Making sure they're on the desktop client. Um, And then the second, it sometimes it depends on the actual hardware, like how old is the device that they're joining in from, and then also what like has Teams been updated recently, like what version of Teams that they're on. I do
Hmm.
this in a organization where we have 65,000 licensed users, and
Hmm.
we very rarely have any issue whatsoever. Like every now and then somebody's like, I can't hear audio. And so one of my colleagues is usually moderating and they're like, just exit the meeting and then return. And then it usually just picks right up and there's no problem. So I trust it pretty implicitly because I use it all the time as part of the presentations that I deliver. I haven't
Yeah.
gotten any feedback from most of my colleagues about any issues with it. And the few that have popped up, log out and log back in, turn it off, turn it back on.
Hmm. Yeah, and I know that so Microsoft's been promoting the PowerPoint Live for a long, long time, but even the like the enhancements or the bandwidth help by having video in sync and embedding your video in PowerPoint. It's the best way to play video in a Teams meeting. They've been promoting that since like last summer 2021, if I remember right. So
Mhm.
I would hope that, you know, clients have updated enough to where it's not a problem anymore. Um, uh, Teams is pretty aggressive about its updates. It updates independently of the rest of Office. And so, you know, whenever a new version comes out, it should update for everybody within 24 hours because like Teams will refresh itself to the updated version. Or if the person quits Teams, like fully quits the application, reopens it, it will install whatever pending update. If they reboot their computer, same thing. And then they've gotten to the point where their aggressiveness or their pushing is after, I think, is it maybe 14 days or 30 days? I don't know if you know, Andy, where at some point they start putting a banner up that's like, hey, your Teams is out of date. You need to update it. They'll start
Yeah.
nagging you. Um, I just saw in the message center last week that Teams on the Mac, at least, is going to start updating their very, very old client. So it's something like if you haven't updated in 90 days or something, they're going to put it in Microsoft Auto Update. So then like the Office app will force the update also. So they're getting more aggressive about like, hey, you need to be running like a somewhat up to date version of Teams to have the best experience. Hopefully, that's going to help out with like, when I click a button, I can be confident that it's going to show for everybody the same. Yeah, 30 days was, I used to say like the banner comes up saying, hey, you're out of date. So
One nuance that I have noticed around this, and this is unique to those of us that work in multiple Microsoft 365 tenants, and
mhm.
my employer currently we have three separate tenants, and so I do have to do some switching every now and then.
Oh yeah.
But I notice as I go from one tenant to another, like Teams tries to shut down, and then it asks me to log in with the credentials to the other tenant, and then switch over to it. I've noticed that as I move back and forth between the tenants, it always loads the oldest version between like
Mhm.
the three, and then like I have to hit update, let it update, and then restart, and then I get the most recent version of it. I'm on a Mac though, so it's a little bit different for me when I do that. I haven't seen that as much on the Windows side of things.
Mhm.
Tenant switching is a whole other conversation, so I don't want to go too far
It's
down
super
that.
complex. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far
Yeah.
down the rabbit hole in that one. But like for most of our users, they're just logging in as corporate at Microsoft.com or whatever, the one tenant.
Mhm.
So as long as you can manually go in there and you can check and you can make sure you're up to date. But I have noticed just switching back and forth between tenants, it does load like an older version of it, and then I have to update and then go from there. So like I try to log in on like maybe a VM for one client, or I try to log in under different profiles if I can, just to minimize
Yeah.
some of that.
That's why I use the web version a lot for that, because I'm the same way. Like, it gets squirrely because of the version that's coming down to where if you like, for me, I'm in ring 1.5 on my main home tenant, but then on the Microsoft side it says like it goes from beta to like MS or MSFT. I think it's just MS. That's like ring 2, I think. So it's like some features that I'm enjoying like get like reverted back if you do the desktop app, and then when
Mhm.
you switch back to your home tenant back on ring 1.5, like now it's got to update that version back to like the more bleeding edge. So to get around that, or to just stop that, I use the web browser for all of my non corporate, non primary account activities, and that's
Right.
helped out a lot. Francisco has a question, or just a comment here, that they've had complaints, especially from mobile users, whenever they try to embed videos, mostly YouTube and Vimeo videos. Um, I haven't heard complaints personally, but I have anecdotally seen problems with some of the streaming services like YouTube. For me, YouTube has been really solid. It's been a pretty safe option to put in. Embedding the actual video file, it does make the PowerPoint gigantic, but that has given me the best compatibility. YouTube has worked really well for me. But the thing that I've had trouble with is Microsoft Stream, actually, where if I try to put a stream video embedded on a slide deck, most of my audience, they get a login screen where it says like, hey, you need to log in to watch this stream video. And I kind of have, you know, concerns about that. So that's something that I've just avoided. And I usually go to YouTube whenever I do that type of stuff. Here's a good question. So, do you know if Microsoft is going to make PowerPoint Live available in live events? Um, I don't believe that they have any plans to. I know it's not on the public roadmap, and but myself, other MVPs like Phil is an MVP. He's in here saying like they really need to. Um, we've been giving feedback to the Microsoft product group saying, hey, this is really important, especially for like important live events and doing NDI and some of the advanced production that you guys have designed. It would be really great if we could do PowerPoint live. But I haven't seen any indicator that they're planning to do it. I think, to Phil's point here, I believe probably there's like architectural reasons for that, because of like the cloud rendering that's happening and it going down to the clients individually directly from the cloud rendering service. My guess would be that that's probably why they didn't just have it come out, with PowerPoint Live. So, but yeah, that's a good question or a good feedback.
They're also
Phil, you're not an MVP? I thought you were, man.
They're also pushing webinars. The webinar capabilities overlaps a good bit with the live events. It's just you don't get some of the advanced production things that you get in the live event. You don't get the delay and the moderation, but you get a lot of the other features that you get in a live event through a webinar. And in a webinar, you can definitely do PowerPoint Live and take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think Will's onto something here where, I kind of wonder if they're turning Teams meetings into, where they're going to replicate the Teams live event experience. I agree. I think strategically, what we're seeing is Microsoft probably. I think it's like a SharePoint page strategy where SharePoint pages, they're made up of web parts, and I liken them to Lego, where you start out and the page is your oyster. You can build it however you want, and you're not going to break the overall structure of the SharePoint construct. I kind of am viewing team meetings that way, where what I think Microsoft is doing is I think they're building these building blocks so that you start with a meeting and then you grow it by adding these components. You add meeting apps, you add Q&A, you add advanced production capabilities to make it what you want it to be, so that hopefully in the future, maybe we'll have a world where you don't have to decide up front, do I want a meeting or do I want a live event? It's just everything is you schedule it and then you bolt on the Lego bricks to make it into a live event if that's what your goal is, So I think you're onto something. I would venture to guess that's probably Microsoft's overall strategy, and I think it makes sense because that's how they re-architected SharePoint to go from legacy SharePoint to SharePoint Online, and how that works. So, yeah, Phil agrees. Yeah, and we've seen that with webinars and meeting options and stuff like that for sure. So, I think we're all caught up on questions here. So, moving on to presenter modes, we talked a little bit about the presenter mode inside of PowerPoint Live, which is a new thing. Now, if I show my screen here, figure out which one it is. There it is. And I'm going to take control of this slide deck. So I'm going to take control, and then I'm going to stop presenting here in a second. It helps if I click into the window. There we go. And I'm going to stop presenting so I can, go back and present a full screen. There's 3 options that we have today for PowerPoint, or not PowerPoint Live, for sharing a screen. And these are the presenter modes. So you see these up at the top. Technically it's 4 because you can just share your screen. But if you want to do a presenter mode, you have standout, you have side by side available to you now, and you have the reporter mode, as well as the ability to add a background. So you can even change and customize your background a little bit. So personally, my favorite way of doing presenter modes is to use this side-by-side option. So I would select the side-by-side option, and then I can go in and add a background, and I can select something different. So I like this kind of purple, it looks a little Teamsy. So I'm going to select that as the background that I prefer, then go back, and I'm going to share my screen. And then now that I'm using that presenter view, let's close out these windows here so they're not distracting. This is what my audience sees. And this is kind of a cool thing about the presenter views, is that you get a preview window of what your audience sees. And you can go put that on another monitor if you want to. And you can be confident that when you're looking a certain direction, you're looking at your screen physically, and where you are in space. But see, Andy's not talking, he's just watching. That's kind of weird, that he's down there. So again, as a presenter, if you want a nice clean presentation, go ahead and minimize that if you're on a single monitor. The audience, though, they don't see this little preview window. So you don't have to worry about if it's like on your laptop and you only have a laptop, this is invisible to the audience. So like if I bring up Andy's screen, which oh, he doesn't have the he's not seeing the presentation. I don't know if that's in another window or not. But he would just see the background right there. I don't know why it's not sharing inside of there.
I'm not seeing your presentation coming through.
Interesting. Okay.
Maybe try
But
resharing.
one thing to point out, yeah, let me try like resharing this. So let me bring this up. Quit sharing. I can hear my cat like yelling at me from the other room. So we're gonna share content. We're gonna we'll select the reporter view this time. And that's gonna cut Megan out. It's gonna put her on this like background with her screen in the upper corner above her shoulder.
There we go.
There we go. So that worked that time. So now, thank you, Andy. Appreciate it. Let me find a good one here. Did that play through? Oh, there it is. The Mario sound. So, but now it's not rendering here. Of course, that's annoying. But yeah, so she's on top of her content. Basically, they call this the reporter view. I think this should be the anchor person view personally, because it's more like the person in the studio at the anchor desk. It's not a reporter. A reporter's like out in the field. But so that's the reporter, the side by side, and the standout mode. Standout mode's kind of like Twitch streamer view, if you will. It's like if I bring that up here, let's stop sharing and then go back in, and I'm going to select standout, which puts me in the lower corner, and then share my screen. It's going to minimize the Teams window. And then there's that little preview screen right there. So I get rid of that. Now Megan is on top of her stuff. The thing to point out, though, which I think Andy's going to, is if you're in the web version, yeah, you need to be aware of your audience again and some of their capabilities. If your audience is in the web version, they're not going to see this fancy you on top of your slides view or you on top of your screen. Instead, what they're going to see is they're going to see you with a black background in the film strip. The other thing to point out, which and Andy's getting to it, we're going to see here in a second what it looks like. The other thing to point out is that this fancy presenter mode is also not recorded into the meeting. So what we see here on Andy's screen is you see that Megan is just with a black background. It's as if she selected a black background virtually, and then it's just her screen. What Andy is looking at, that's what the recording is going to look like. So unfortunately, you don't get the cool side-by-side in the recording or the web users. I believe, Andy, do you know the mobile users? I think they see presenter modes now, don't they? On iOS and Android.
Somebody just, I don't join a whole lot of meetings from mobile anymore. I rarely leave the house over the last 2 years. I used to attend a ton of meetings, especially like Microsoft meetings over my lunch break from my mobile phone. So I can't tell you authoritatively on that one. I haven't experienced a lot of mobile meetings in a while.
Okay.
Maybe somebody in the audience
I think it works on phone.
Answer that for us.
I'm the same way. If I'm mobile, it's usually because I'm driving, and then I'm like using CarPlay, and you don't see anything that way.
And like what we're displaying in the screens here is as you're pulling up questions. Like I'm just showing you the comparison. Like the big screen that you see, that's the web. You can see my
this
tabs
is a super nice view.
Top of the screen there, and then in the lower corner, that's the team's desktop app. So that's the difference that you see, and I can switch it up. So like this is the desktop app. That's the main meeting window, and then you see the comparison with the web browser experience down in that lower corner. So when somebody's joining from web, they're not going to get that overlay experience like those of us that join on the desktop are going to get. But that's another thing to consider when you're presenting from here is if you're going to do that overlay mode where you're on top of the content, you need to make sure that you're not blocking content. You need to build your slide deck in a certain way. You need to move things around into other places. And if you're going to be doing a demo where you're like sharing a web browser and like the content that's in that web browser. And like, let me show an example. For instance, like I'll share my screen and let me pull my window up. All right, so let me move over there. All right.
I don't know
So
what a
I would
crazy
like,
House of Mirrors effect.
yeah. All right, so like I would go in and like I would present on top of that. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff like going on
Hmm.
in those windows. Like I want to like make sure that actually sorry, let me also like confusing myself. Yeah, so like if I did the presenter mode on top of like what I would be sharing, like if I turn that on, um where did it go? Hold on. Try that again.
Oh, you're just sharing a window.
Oh, I don't have my camera on, that's why.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, if like if I were to go and like share, my desktop and there's a control in the anchored in the lower left hand corner, like I might need to turn off presenter mode so they can see the thing that I'm clicking on behind me.
Hmm.
Like other tools like OBS, you can move back and forth on the screen left and right, and move the video that you're overlaying. And in some of these scenarios, you wouldn't be able to do that. So you just need to make sure that you're paying attention to where you are on the screen and the content that you're
Hmm.
displaying so that you don't cover up and block something that might be important for the audience to see. I find that happens a
Yeah.
lot if like I'm demoing Power Apps or Power Automate. There's always this little menu down in the lower right hand corner that I'm blocking if I'm doing the presenter mode. So I just need to switch out of presenter mode to make sure they can see that.
Hmm. Will brought up an interesting point here that he said one time like somebody somebody like their presentation went haywire, like froze or it went away, and she just kept presenting for half an hour because and nobody could tell her. So like having that preview window, that's really nice. You only get that preview window if you do the presenter modes, but yeah, if you turn that on and then you throw it on the other monitor, that's going to be what the audience sees. Is that it? They call that in event production, they call that a confidence monitor. So you kind of get a confidence monitor by doing that. And then one question that came up also that is just in general, like when do you think we'll get access to mesh and avatars and all of that? Um, I've been experimenting with like VR in Teams meetings right now using another app called Immersed. I'm going to have a video out about it next week. But Microsoft announced in November that they're targeting summer of 2022 to start having some of the first things in Mesh in Teams. I think probably it would be avatars first, because like avatars kind of are the framework for the rest of everything else. You got to start by having an avatar. So I would expect we might see that first and then start seeing some of the world building type of features. Personally, I just to totally speculate, I have no information about where they are with mesh. I would expect that, if they make summer, it would be very, very late summer. I'm kind of already setting my expectations up to, to see it be delayed, because like this is a huge undertaking. It's a really ambitious project. So I wouldn't be surprised if they delay it so they release it at the right time when it has the right feature set.
I think it'll be a slow rollout of mesh and those features. So temper expectations.
Yeah.
We're getting into bleeding edge technology. It's a very complex problem to take on. It's a huge challenge, not only for Microsoft but for any organization that's going into that space. And so just temper expectations. Like it's not going to be production ready tomorrow. It's going to take a little while, but
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I just want to get hands on with it, and the more we play with it, the more
Me
they can
too.
learn from us, and the better they can make it. And like
Yep.
anything, it's going to grow over time.
Yeah. The real question is not when are they going to have the feature out, but when is it going to be socially acceptable to do it? That'll be the real tail on this feature is,
Mhm.
I think we're, like you said, it's bleeding edge, but I think we're maybe a couple years out from it being like normal, you
Mhm.
know? Whenever I join these meetings in Immersed, maybe at the end, if we want to play with it, I can show you, like, I can make this camera into an avatar. Uh, I, it usually disrupts the meeting for the first 5 minutes, you know, because I join as an avatar. It was like, what the crap is going on? But like by the end of it, it's kind of normalized. But I haven't gotten to the point yet where I can go from one meeting and then the next day have a meeting with the same group of people and they don't make comments about it already. You know, they don't make fun of it again. So even though they might be okay with it by the end of the meeting, they still their brain, they're just like, this is so dumb. Like every time I join another day. And I think there's going to be a little bit to overcome that way. So it's going to be interesting what it's going to add to corporate communication standards and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
Will's answer. He's like, I don't know when it's coming. I just want a built-in link shortener. I agree, man. The meeting links are so long. They have it in Microsoft Forms. You know, I love that in Forms, being able to shorten those links. So should we move on to kind of less common ways to share or get into like crazy crazy ideas?
This is where I've
Just
been spending a
different
lot of my
things.
time recently,
Yeah.
trying to figure out the best way to approach some unique scenarios, some unique use cases
Mhm.
with sharing. We're going to overlap, I think, in the next couple of sections with some of the previous presentations. Breakout rooms are going to be a conversation that are going to come up as part of this,
Yeah.
webinars as well. But like what we went through for the last couple of bullet points were basically, what do you get if you're in the desktop, if you share your entire screen, you share a window, or if you do PowerPoint Live, versus like what is it from the web browser experience. But now we're actually starting
Mhm.
to talk about some of the more detailed things that you can share. There's things like built into the share tray, like the whiteboard, but there's nuances that I experience. And then there's other
Mhm.
applications that people are going to throw at you, like Miro or something else. So this is going to be where we really start to get into the nuts and bolts. But this is where I've been spending time with my users for the last like few months because they
Oh
have
yeah.
some unique
Nice.
scenarios that we're trying to address. So I
Yeah.
think there's going to be a lot of tips and tricks and a lot of workarounds that we talk about coming up in here.
Nice. So to go on the next slide here. We got, why didn't it didn't it load? Um oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
just bounce back to like
So
slide 9.
there we go. So yeah, you want to go into like whiteboard and content camera and stuff like that first? That's
Yeah,
probably a
let's
good
do
thing
that.
before we talk about portions of a screen. So I'm curious, do you have content camera in your Teams app right now?
Let me
Because I
switch
checked
over.
this morning and I do not.
All right, so I'm
So
going over
I can't
to,
show it.
yeah. So I'm in the desktop app for this
Mhm.
user in the demo tenant, and I'm in the share tray. I'm not seeing it.
Okay. So to show you guys a little bit of what it looks like or what it should look like, Andy and I we were talking about we've been seeing this feature come in and out unfortunately. So content camera Teams, instead of showing you live, I'm going to show you um, a video from a friend of ours. So I have a video on this, but here I'm going to mute that so I don't hear myself. I have a video on this. It shows how to do it. But this is Daryl Webster, our friend from New Zealand. He did a video also. He did a live stream kind of going over shared content. So when you see this button, you guys out there might see it, and I don't, just because we're in like different rings. You can see that you have this button for share content from a camera. And this is really handy if you have a physical whiteboard or a physical piece of paper that you want to point a camera at it and then optimize or enhance that as your shared content. So you don't want to do a digital whiteboard, you don't want to do a screen necessarily, but you want to like stand up and write because that's the most organic way of doing it. Then choosing a content camera source is a really good way to do that. So thanks, Andy. Yeah, he put Daryl's YouTube video in the chat here for you guys to check it out. So when you select the content camera option, you get the ability to say, this is a whiteboard, a document, or a video that I'm going to point my camera at. Most people are going to do the whiteboard option. So he selects whiteboard, and basically it's going to look for a whiteboard in your camera frame somewhere. And when it has a whiteboard, it's going to detect these edges right here, and it's going to like optimize those edges and auto straighten the whiteboard so that it shows up properly, and it crops in on where the whiteboard is in that space. And you can see that Daryl's like drawing has gotten way more bold. The lines look a lot better. And that was kind of his first initial try at it. Now, I think this time you can see him kind of cringing because it's like, is it going to get the edges? Is it going to get him? Nope, it didn't get it that time either. So there we go. So he kind of made some adjustments to his camera so that it saw the edges, and then boom, it zoomed in on that whiteboard, and you can see those drawings, in a nice bold format. The cool thing about this too, which it kind of blows my mind technologically, is that it overlays those lines. It turns them into vector lines, and then you can go and draw in that space again without covering up the content. Because that's like the worst thing if you pointed a camera at a whiteboard and you're like a teacher, you go and stand in front of that drawing you just did. Well, now nobody can see what you just drew. With content capture, you can confidently draw and not cover up the content. So Daryl's going to move in to that space and he's going to start drawing, and he would cover up the icons right there. But because it's rendered on top of him, he's semi-transparent. You're not blocking the view, which is really, really cool. So, and there's him drawing on a physical whiteboard while it's doing content capture. So it's a cool subject. I think he put my name on because I was watching this live stream live with him. So there's some options in here. You can change things. You can kind of optimize your environment. And my video as well kind of goes into like optimal camera placement and how to like get proper edges so it can detect those the right way. Andy, have you used content capture yet, or do you have users who are trying it out?
Have not seen it in one of my tenants yet.
Okay.
And while you were going over the presentation, I posted or I sent a couple of links out, but I have not seen it in one of my environments yet. I'm in public preview. I'm in targeted release. I'm in standard release. I'm in slow release. I've got like 6 different tenants. I have not seen it in one of my tenants yet. I've seen
near the end of the
demos.
year, it was like all the way in Ring 4. And, like it was all published and everybody was talking about it. And I waited until like it was out and I could demo it as Megan Bowen, and then it went away. So I don't know if they're making optimizations and bringing it back out, or if it's still just rolling out possibly.
Well, there's some message center updates from September of 2021 with some of the rollout and some of the timeline around it. But going and searching for the actual message center ID post is not returning anything. So there's a chance that they pulled it back to make some optimizations, as you were saying, on it. But there's a couple of cached articles on that. I'll send those through for anybody that's interested in learning more about that. But I have not seen it in one of my tenants yet. I'm really interested in it because of what I do in training. That's really helpful. So I don't have that tool in my tool belt to be able to use. So the next best thing I have is whiteboard. And I can take advantage of whiteboard and do some comparable things, but I can also do it in a collaborative type space as well. I like the idea of being able to have like a physical whiteboard in the room and to be able to work from that. But in a digital world, like I can just pull up my iPad and open up the whiteboard app and start doing something very, very similar.
That's exactly how I feel. I feel like it's just a stopgap, like it's nice and it's better for hybrid work. But in my opinion, if you can make yourself do Microsoft Whiteboard and go full digital, please try doing that first, because it's going to make it a more equitable experience because everybody can draw on that whiteboard, you know? So, oh, we do have a comment here saying, "Hey, I see it in mine," and she's in developer preview. So yeah, it's kind of hit or miss, you know, like who has it, who doesn't. I think it's important to talk about because it's a cool feature and it technically should be out. But yeah, I agree, Andy. Like if we're gonna do whiteboarding, I think it's best to just go all the way to Microsoft Whiteboard.
Yeah.
And you know, the new whiteboard came out, I think, about September, and it's been much enhanced over the original whiteboard in Teams to where I think it's finally good enough that I can recommend it to people, and I have been in my organization. So Andy, you want to show us what this looks like, and then we'll talk about one nuance or one complication with whiteboard that still kind of makes it a little bit tough.
Yeah, so we're in a Teams meeting, and I'm loading the whiteboard experience from there. So you see this as part of the meeting experience, built into Teams, but also just to kind of showcase. It does show up in a few other locations as well. So, like for
Mm-hmm.
instance, I'm keeping my Teams window in the lower corner there, but if I switch over into my office environment, I'm going to be able to go into all apps, and it's going to be a standalone app that we're going to be able to pull up in the web browser as well. So I can
Mm-hmm.
access Whiteboard directly through my web browser. So let me log in as my user. So you see it's loading there, and it will show me content. So here's one that says it was edited just a little while ago. I'm pretty sure that's the server time.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar whiteboard. So you see it's the same experience. Like as I go back and forth between the windows, like it's comparable now versus like what it used to be. And we can see
Mm-hmm.
it supports co-authoring. John's in there and he's actually annotating and he's working on it. So I can access it there. There's a Windows desktop app for it that you can take advantage of. And then my personal favorite is the iPad. I can use it
Mm-hmm.
on my iOS device, and I can take advantage of my Apple Pencil, and I can use that for my whiteboard experience. And that's the one that I've been most comfortable with because it's had most of the features that I've needed for the entire life cycle of
Mm-hmm.
whiteboard. But you see now, like we're bringing it into all these different experiences, and it's very comparable across the board.
Yeah.
And with the co-authoring, it meets one of those needs. We talked a little bit earlier about wanting to annotate on the screen. Like I can annotate from PowerPoint Live to the audience, but the audience can't interact with me. Well, Whiteboard's a way that we can do that. And there's some nuances there we're going to talk about, but that gives
Mm-hmm.
us the ability to have that uh, annotation and shared experience and to be able to collaborate together in the same space.
Yeah. Now, the caveats to whiteboard or kind of the nuances of using whiteboard is where it's available and who it's available to, and how it works after the meeting. So, what was pointed out in the chat here is really important. I think probably the first thing to talk about is that this whiteboarding that we're doing right now is not captured by a recording. So if you're recording the meeting, the people who were in the meeting or who were invited to the meeting, the whiteboard has been shared with them, so they can go into the whiteboard, you know, and like view it as it is right now. But they're not going to see the ideation happening. They're not going to see the drawing in a recording unless you were to open up the whiteboard app and then share your screen so that you're, you know, capturing the screen while you're drawing in whiteboard. That would be one way that you could kind of get around that complication is you could do it that way. The other caveat to this, or the other like kind of detail that we want to keep in mind, is guest access. Now, you probably didn't notice, but in the background right here, I've got an MTR set up, a Microsoft Teams room, and that has the ability to show the gallery and all of the cool stuff. I can turn on and off my camera, and you can whiteboard on an MTR if it has a touch screen on it, if you're in the same organization. So When Andy went as Adele and shared this whiteboard or started a whiteboard, everybody in Contoso had access to that whiteboard and it showed up for them. This MTR behind me is not in Contoso. So, what the people who are not in your organization are going to see, the guests, they'll see an error message that says, hey, whiteboarding is in progress. You don't have access now, but soon you will. It says like coming soon or something. So, that's another thing is like, if you're all together in the same organization, sure, yeah, use whiteboard, do it natively in Teams because that's the better experience. But if you want to record it, or if you want your guests to be able to see the whiteboard while you're working in it, then my recommendation would be to open it up either in the app or open it up in the web browser version and then share that into the meeting as a window or as a shared screen, because then you're going to get it recorded and everybody, including the guests, will be able to see that whiteboard in progress. So that's my recommendations. Andy, is there anything I'm missing with that?
I usually point out with whiteboard that the whiteboard is way more powerful than people give it credit for when they first look at it.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, you have a canvas that's 360 degrees. You can pan and zoom and move all around inside of there pretty much to your heart's content. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's you don't have an edge like a physical whiteboard. You're going to run into an edge like in the room. You don't have that here. You can just keep moving on until you get to like what you need. So that's one of the first things I always point out about this is just how free form this entire canvas is, but also it's infinite. You can't find an edge on it, which is great. And
Yeah,
it's
it's super cool.
collaborative. That's the second big thing. So many people can get in here at the same time and work on it. And that's great. And depending on what you're doing, you can capture it as an image and you can pick up that experience later on. You can go back and forth. Like this is one session, come back in and pick up, but you can export it as an image and you can work with it. And then there's just the intelligence that's baked into it. So being able to automatically format shapes, like I didn't draw a perfect square, but it went ahead and did that. I didn't make an arrow, but it went ahead and did that. That's intuitive. It's easy. It's easy to work with, which is
Mm-hmm.
really, really great. And then I can easily go back and forth between my different whiteboards and my experiences with that. Um, some of the feedback that I've gotten from users that they're a little frustrated with is like, for example, inside of a sticky note, they can't change like the size of the text. Like they can't make it so that they're,
Yeah.
see as I'm kind of moving in, it sticks to it. Like it has a certain resolution. Uh, they
Mm-hmm.
they want to be able to change the size of the text so they can put more inside of there and have a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of content. And that's something you can provide through like Microsoft feedback, and maybe they'll take that into account in the future. So that's
Yeah.
been, like one thing that maybe a competitor might do that you can change like the formatting in there. But outside of that, like the things they built into it are probably more than I actually really need. I like to keep it simple, and like even though I can put a document or a PowerPoint in there, like that's like that's more than I asked for, which is pretty cool. So like I'm just going to embed a PowerPoint in there. Going back to like one of the topics from earlier, having the ability to annotate on top of like a presentation. Now we can do that. I can bring a presentation in, insert that as part of my whiteboard experience.
That's super nice.
And
Yeah.
pan and zoom however I want, and then say to the audience like, "Hey, I need some feedback on this thing. So go and grab a pencil and move in and tell me what you like and what you don't." And you're not modifying my slide; you're annotating on top of an image of that in a co-authoring experience, which is great. Now, there was one thing in the comments that I think is really important that we bring up about the whiteboard experience inside of Microsoft Teams. It is not included in the recording. So, like, if we were recording this Teams meeting and we're using this experience, it's not going to show up in the recording. So, here's the workaround for that: change what you're like. We can create a whiteboard experience and start But what I can do as the presenter, like you all can be in the whiteboard app and inside of Teams, and then I can switch over to a window where I have the whiteboard running. And so I can share that. So like if we John, if we bring back up your experience, like I should be presenting so
Yeah,
you
so here's the Teams meeting window. I was trying to get that open, and you already
yeah.
had it open.
So like you see
Yeah,
like
so
I'm
I'm
switching
seeing
back
the
and forth like
browser itself. Yeah.
yeah, so I'm in the web browser and then like I can continue the experience over here and do whatever I need to do. And then if I am sharing this, this gets captured in the recording. So we can see that later and you can still co-author on it. You can still participate and work. Like you just need to open up whiteboard in your browser and you can work with it from there. Um, they've said it's on the roadmap to record a whiteboard inside of a Teams meeting recording. It's just not there right now. So this is the workaround for it. Just open up whiteboard in your web browser, do your annotation session there, make sure you're sharing it on the screen so everybody can see it. And if they need to annotate, just have them open the same one up in their web browser, and then we get the best of everything. You can those that need to annotate can annotate, those that are there to consume can consume. We get it captured in the meeting recording, and then we're able to go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for demoing that. Like that's a good way to capture it that way. Um, so yeah, Will asks, do you know if there's a way to create your own whiteboard templates? I don't believe so right now, Will. I haven't seen anything either announced about creating your own or like, making a template and then saving it. One thing people in my organization have done is one group of users grabbed like they made a template in PowerPoint, where they like put a bunch of boxes in a certain order and they kind of like created a guide. They made it as a PowerPoint slide. And then what they do is they save that as a template and then bring it in to a whiteboard. And that's been helpful for them, to kind of have like a certain structure that wasn't one of the pre-built templates for them. You might try doing that. Or if you save it as like an image or something instead of a PowerPoint slide. So, and Phil has a good comment that he likes whiteboard for the simplicity, but for the advanced stuff, he likes Mural and Miro, which is kind of the next thing that we have on our list here is in in a meeting now, like as of a couple months ago, you can share content from a meeting app. So what that means is when you go into a let me see, I think that's my screen. If I go in here, rather than sharing content, a more advanced way to share content is by going up to the dots and then clicking add an app. And there's a few apps that have been updated over the past couple weeks. Miro is one of them. Mural is another one, where it will actually share the content to the stage as like Whiteboard does. So if I go into Miro, I'm not logged into Miro, so this isn't going to look very good. But you would log in, you would add it as an application, and then when you select a board, it will actually display it for everybody on the screen inside of the meeting stage, rather than as like a separate like pane or something like that. So I don't know, Andy, if you've got a Miro account or anything that you can show. I need to get signed into mine so I can like, because there's also an Oculus Quest app for Miro that I wanted to like kind of play with and try out. But that's another option for you is you can share apps to the stage. And I think that came out last fall.
So I actually don't have any experience using either one of those apps. I've just haven't come across them in my work life, and I've been using the actual physical whiteboard in technical
Yeah.
trainings for years now, and then the virtual whiteboard over the last couple of years. But they're on my radar because of a couple of client
Mhm.
requests, and so there's some things I'll be exploring there. I'll probably reach out to you if I have any questions, but I don't have any experience with either of the other two apps when
Yeah.
it comes to while working inside of meetings.
Cool. One guy to look out for is Daryl Webster. He has some
Yeah.
experience with Miro. If you join, so here's a plug. If you're on LinkedIn, go join the Microsoft Loop user group that Daryl owns. He does the user group meetings. We had the first one like a week or two ago, and he was using Miro as kind of the guide or the structure for the meeting. So you can see kind of what that looks like when he was doing Miro that way. Yeah, and Phil says he's going to try out the Oculus app too sometime. I want to try that out as well. You're going to have to get a headset, Andy.
Yeah.
You get left
Yeah, I
behind,
think
bro. So moving on to some of those like, less common ways to share that are inside of Teams, probably the most less common way to share, or the craziest thing is, what about ultra wide monitors? So this is completely outside of Teams capabilities. If you share an ultra wide monitor, what can you do, or how can you, make that a better experience for your audience? One way that I've been playing with is using an app called VLC. So this is the videolan.org website. You go download the VLC player. That has the ability to actually capture a screen inside of that app, or capture the screen, the portion of the screen. So I saw this on Reddit, on the Microsoft Teams subreddit a few weeks ago, and kind of played with it. But people have been writing like scripts, because you can control VLC with command line, and then you can say, "Hey, I want a script that when I double click it, it opens up VLC, it starts capturing the upper left quadrant of my screen, and then you share that window into your Microsoft Teams meeting." So I don't think I can show it super easily here, other than to show you real quickly how to do the capture portion. So I'm going to show my screen here, flip that over. And then when you go to VLC, and I got to bring this on the screen. This is a free video player. You can get it from videolan.org. And when you go, you can do open capture device. And this is what you would what you would do in a command line command if you wanted to even further automate it. But if you did it manually, say I want to share a portion of my ultra wide monitor, and I'm going to do this this real meta thing here. I'm going to share the browser that you guys can't see. I'm going to capture that over here in this window. So what you do is, under the capture device, you've got, what device do you want? Do you want a screen? Or if you add like other like capture cards and stuff, you can select those. I'm going to grab a screen. I'm going to grab my 3440 by 1440, my ultra wide monitor. And if I just did it this way, then whenever I hit open, what it's going to do is, boom, there's that ultra skinny. You can't really read what's going on in here very well. But like what I want to do is, I want to show just a portion of this right here. So rather than doing everything, this is what the Teams people would see. Instead, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to hit open capture device. I'm going to go back to my screen, but I'm going to set it to a certain width and height. So I'm going to set it to like 1280 by 720. So a 720p window. I'm going to hit open. And now I'm sharing just the corner of my screen, which is where that window is. And now I can move things in and out of that zone to show just a portion. But I've locked the aspect ratio of this monitor to be 720p, so it fits nicely into a Teams window. The only downside that I've found from doing this, and what you would do is, you would take this window right here on my screen, you would share that into your Teams meeting. So you are going to have like the menu bar across the top right here, but that's not a huge deal in my opinion. The only downside I've found is that it doesn't have like a boundary on your ultra wide. I wish that VLC would like put like a red box or a green box that is that size on the screen, so you knew where your zone was. Unfortunately, it doesn't do that. And I want to say I want to say people have posted about the Power Toys application on Windows. I'm not a Windows user, so I don't have that. But I want to say there's something in Power Toys as well that lets you share a portion of your screen. I don't know, Andy, if you've heard of that before, but I found out how to do it in VLC so I can do it on either platform.
Yeah, I know Power Toys has some capabilities. As you're going through this, like my thought process was, I like the zone, and I like being able to uh, put the resolution, lock in the aspect ratio, and then just move things in and out there. My only problem would
Mm-hmm.
be I would forget where it is on the screen and like the zone and whatnot. So
Uh-huh.
I actually
Yeah.
do something a little different. This is one of the times when I'll actually do window sharing. So
Mm-hmm.
in this particular situation, if I need to share something that's outside of like my main desktop and I need to do it quickly,
Mm-hmm.
I actually use some tools to organize my windows on my big monitor, and then I do a window share to that specific thing, and
Mm-hmm.
then that gives me the flexibility to kind of move back and forth rather quickly. So the tools that I'm actually using for some of that kind of complement what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let me just close down some of these windows. All right.
Yeah.
So I use a tool on the Mac. It's called Magnet, and Magnet gives
Yeah.
me the ability to put windows in a very specific spot, but also to organize them in a particular way. Like I can put something in the exact center of my screen, vertically and horizontally. I can have it take up exactly 50% of the screen to the left or to the right. I can be in the upper corner or in the lower corner. That's
Mm-hmm.
really helpful on like a widescreen, an ultra widescreen. Now, the second thing is, and
Mm,
this
yeah.
is if you have a Dell monitor, this is really helpful. Dell has this thing called Display Manager, and
Mm-hmm.
you can download it for a lot of Dell monitors. And the cool thing about Display Manager is it gives you all these predefined layouts where you can just drag something and have it snap into a grid and just show up like right
Mm.
there. And there's tons of layouts, and you can even create one of your own if you want. You just arrange things however you want. You hit save. Make sure you don't have anything layered on top of one another though. Like, kind of flatten it out as much as you can. But you can
Mhm.
even save your own in there. And so you can use this as a way
That's
to
cool.
easy organize your content. And like the one that I use most of the time on my main monitor on my widescreen is this 6 block grid. It's a 3 by 3, and I find that gives me pretty good resolution within that particular zone. And so like
Yeah.
every window is essentially sized the same way. And so when I do the desktop share with that, it's like, I go in, or the window share rather. I go to the window and I just point to that one that I want to make part of whatever I'm sharing. It keeps that resolution for me, and
Mhm.
then it's comparable as I move back and forth. And from an end user perspective, I haven't heard any complaints from the people that I work with around that. So that's
Mhm.
one of the things that I do to work with like those bigger monitors. So the software again is Dell Display Manager. I have a Dell monitor, so I can use that. And then Magnet is the application on the Mac world. I know some of this is baked
Yeah.
into Windows, but I think there's an equivalent in the Windows world, and there's even an update to Magnet that I've been using recently that gives me a little bit more control, a little bit more power, but I got to pay for it. It's called Rectangle Pro. I think John
Oh,
and I
yeah,
had a
you
whole
told me about
thread
that
going
one.
on Twitter
Yeah.
around some of that. I'm still getting all the shortcuts down on that one. It's very similar to Magnet. It's basically the same thing on
Mhm.
the back end. But that's how I handle it on my widescreen monitor. That
Nice.
the zone thing is kind of cool though, but I feel like I forget where it is, and
Yeah,
put
that's
something
kind
in
of been
the
my problem,
yeah.
is not knowing where it is. Something that just popped in my mind is, I guess what you could do, if I go back to my screen and I like open up my whole ultra wide, I guess what you could do is you could, if you were like really dedicated, you could open up like your wallpaper, for 3440 by 1440. You could open that up in an app like Canva, and you could put like a 1080p red box,
Yeah,
in the corner. And then that's like where your zone is. And you could put it in
yeah,
your wallpaper, and then you would know where you're at. That's, I mean, I've seen some amazingly cool setups, I'm a big fan of like going onto subreddits that have like battle stations or Mac setups or like super cool office setups. Um,
Hmm.
so like I totally get like I want just a sleek ultra wide right in front of me. That's all I want. But I want to be able to share content. It might be worth it to like, do that in a wallpaper. And then if you're going to
Yeah.
automate it with like a script, I guess what you could do is you could say, all right, step one of the script is to change my wallpaper to that one that has the border. And then step two, launch a VLC with these commandlets or with these attributes to auto capture that zone. And then boom, share it into a Teams meeting. And then when you're done sharing, you could run a script to like set your wallpaper back to like your normal super cool one. So you could do something like that, I guess. I'm going to check out the Dell display monitor though. Um, so because you have, I have a Dell as well,
Hmm.
so I'm going to check that one out sometime.
Yeah, they just
But
updated it, released it for Mac back in the fall. If you're on a
mhm,
Windows machine, you can use it with a Dell monitor today, and it covers most monitors. There's a huge list. But those of us in the
yeah,
Mac world, we didn't get it until the fall. And since I've used it, it's been really nice. But I don't typically share from my widescreen. My widescreen is more for me to monitor what's going on. I utilize all of the widescreen when we're in a presentation. You should see the window that I have open in front of me right now, and all the things that like I'm looking at and
yeah,
monitoring. And like I've got Chrome for some of the demos that we're doing. I've got a window directly for Restream and the comments and everything that's happened there. I've got another Chrome
mhm,
window open so I can keep track on social media, what people are saying and how they're interacting with us. I've got OBS running so I can do some overlays and feed them as a single source into here without having to get too complex inside of Restream. I've got my audio monitor going. Like I use that as my display. So I typically don't share from that. I try to share just from my main laptop window.
mhm, yeah. So that's pretty niche, talk about ultra wides. I would be curious for the people who are watching now or watching on demand later, if you have tips and tricks that you know of for doing an ultra wide with Teams, um, let us know in the comments or in the chat because this is something I would really like to figure out because I kind of want to redo my desk. I really do want to have like the good ergonomics of looking straight on at an ultra wide and get that benefit. Because right now I kind of have to like shift my whole body so that I'm ergonomically sitting in front of my monitor. Um, I would like to have a better solution for that so that I don't hurt my back by like sitting with my head turned all day. Um, so yeah, I think it's good probably to wrap it here because we're getting pretty close to time, Andy. The thing that we didn't talk about, we've talked about like best practices for video with PowerPoint Live in the past and sharing content there. One thing we didn't talk about yet is sharing audio in a meeting, and that could maybe be a whole other live stream
Yeah.
if you want to in the future, or an on-demand video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think if you want to see a deep dive on like how to play music and how to do sound effects in a meeting, because we could probably talk as long as we did here about that specifically. Um, but I think that might be good to leave
Here
for
we
the next
go.
one if you want. So, uh, but yeah, let us know what you think about any of this, about ultra wides, about if what you want to hear about audio in the future, and all of that. We'll leave it with Phil mentioned Power Toys Fancy Mode. Yeah, it's like fancy windows or something like fancy
Mhm.
zones. Yeah, that's like the equivalent of splitting up your monitor on the Windows world. I have seen people talk about fancy zones, I believe. And then we got a couple of people saying like, yeah, we should talk about audio. That would be great because yeah, like doing sound effects. I'm going to be presenting at Teams Nation at the end of March with Daryl about co-working spaces that I've been creating, and part of that, a big thing of that, is playing music in the background for people to work to. And we had to figure out the best way to do that inside a team. So I think that would be really interesting. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
looking
would
forward to
love to do
that
a deep dive
talk.
on audio. There's so much
Cool.
that we can do from an out of the box perspective, things you didn't think about, and then start
Hmm.
tying it into, some free stuff, some free plugins. Like there's some really cool stuff you can do with that and like really add to your presentation and engagement with your users and sound effects and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, that would be really fun.
Yeah. Cool idea. I like that. I think we should just shelve that then.
And
So,
not to mention companion mode, the mobile device companion mode with Microsoft Teams. There's some cool audio
yeah,
stuff you can do with
that's
that
rolled
as
out
well.
enough now. Yeah, that
Yeah.
we could start showing that off. That would be an interesting live stream too, because we could figure out how to show our phones through, into this and demo our phones using like AirPlay. So
Yeah.
I do that myself, but yeah, that would be pretty interesting to start talking about some mobile stuff as well. So, anything else to add you can think, Andy? I know you got a jet here in like a minute,
Yeah, I
so
think we've covered quite a lot. There's a couple
cool,
things we
man.
didn't quite touch on, some of the other Microsoft apps and some of the integration there, but I
Hmm.
think this has been fun.
Yeah,
Going
this
down
was a
some of
really
these
fun one.
these rabbit holes. I hope everybody's enjoyed this, and if there's something you want to see, something audio definitely, but if there's something you want to see a deep dive on, let us know. Like we like playing around with this and trying to break it and figure out how far we can push this. Or if you got a cool workaround, let us know in the comments. Either on the YouTube channel or through our social media.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate your time and hanging out with us for the past 2 hours to deep dive into another topic about Microsoft Teams and M365. Andy, have a good weekend. Thanks for chilling out with me for a while, and we'll start the outro music here. So see you
Thanks,
guys
John.
next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.